How did you pick your church? What happened? Talk us through the process.
The preaching now, the church I'm currently at,
Yeah.
I can still remember the preach from like 3-4 weeks ago and the application
Oh, that's
point.
really good. I remember so clearly being in a church service and thinking, I can't keep coming to this Sunday experience and thinking, oh, I'm just here. It's fine. I would wish I was at my old church, whatever.
We have to get up close and personal with people to do the one another stuff.
Okay.
And especially where that gets annoying and frustrating and messy.
Yeah.
And I'm doing it to you, my one another, and you're not doing it back to me. Like, forgive one another. That's where it gets really difficult.
Yeah.
But the church is the place we have to work this stuff out.
Yeah. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Unscripted, where we have honest conversations about culture, faith, and everything else in between. I'm joined by my wonderful colleagues, Sam and Tim, and today we're talking about how to pick a church, or maybe how not to pick a church, right?
Right. Yes. Nice.
It's important.
It's important.
It's very important.
We're on the same page. That's good.
Wow, it's a great place to start.
The page is picking a church is important.
But we both used to work with university students, which meant that every September, a whole load of fresh-faced freshers would turn up in Nottingham for you, Reading for me.
Right.
And they're ready to find a new church.
We love it.
They have come from the church they've grown up in, where they were a member of the youth. That's all they've known, and now they're here, and it's up to them to choose where to go.
And
Did
churches
they do a good job?
Well, churches with big marketing budgets do a good job at recruiting fresh-faced freshers, I would say.
My biggest problem was students who would choose where to go to church based on where the sung worship was coolest.
Classic.
So they went in and it was like, there's at least 7 pieces in that band.
Yeah.
And there's like some really cool like beds, like pads going on the keys.
Yeah, there's lights going on. It's a bit jazzy.
We've recently invested in a Nord keyboard, and the justification for the budgeting was, where there is Nord, there is the Lord. Because of the Holy Spirit pad.
I actually know a student who goes to your church as well, so I might ask him if that's why.
This is what he thinks.
That's why he's there.
Anyway, so why is that a bad reason to pick a church?
I think that's a bad reason to pick a church, because if you say the song worship is coolest here on a Sunday, you're going to run into problems down the line.
No one would say that though. No one would say, I go
Out
here
loud.
because the worship's
Although,
good.
I don't know, in my cohort, when we were all picking churches, everyone went to the church where they were most likely to find a significant other.
Oh,
They were like,
Really?
which is the church with the biggest young adult population? And it also happened to coincide with the church with the best
Everyone's
worship.
gonna cry.
If you were ranking them then, like ways that like young adults choose a church.
Back in the day when I was young,
but it might still be a thing. Like,
it might still be a thing.
Is it that it's kind of song worship is cool?
Yeah.
Spousal potential.
Yes, it's up there. It's really
Let's
up
just name
there.
it.
And then something else. Do
And
we
then
think these are all bad reasons to choose
How close
church?
to a TED talk the preaching is.
How close to it?
Closer
As in,
the
like,
better.
inspiring, jazzy, snappy.
Yeah, a phrase that stays.
Okay.
All of that stuff.
I love a pithy phrase. You're going to remember it forever.
I feel attacked by this thing.
Okay.
Because so last summer,
Yeah.
me and my wife, we moved across the country from Reading, where we were, and we moved to a new place, and we needed to find a new church.
Oh, so this became very live for you, actually, in your own.
So I spent a lot of my life watching young adults try and choose a church.
Yeah.
And now here I was for the first time in 10 years.
Ten
If only
years?
someone would have
Oh
met
my
up with you and helped you
gosh.
process the most important factors in how not to choose a church.
For the first time since I was a fresher and I was in that position to have to say,
Wowzers.
where am I going to go to church?
How did you pick your church? What happened? Talk us through the process.
I went to a few different ones.
Okay.
I can tell you some of the best stories from when we went around. My favourite one is we turned up to this church. We had some friends who already went there.
Yeah.
And we turned up, and the Sunday morning service started at 10:30, and we're kind of coming through the doors at about 10:31, 10:32.
That's not even late. You're on time.
So we get in, and there's like a little foyer that you enter.
Yeah.
And there's this sort of older man stood there who's on the welcome team. Well, hold on.
Okay.
So we walk in, first time in this church building.
Yeah.
And this old man looks at us, and he goes, it started.
Oh no, he shamed you for being late.
And I was cool.
Thanks for the update.
Thanks for the welcome. I feel welcome.
Oh man.
Looking at Zoe like, are you welcomed? I feel welcome. Hey. So we didn't stay at that church.
Okay, fair enough.
Not because of that guy. They're a cool church. The vicar there is really lovely. But we didn't stay at that church. But the church that we did pick was one that was a surprise to us. So we kind of knew the church before we went, and we thought maybe we won't end up there. But after a few weeks of trying other places, we thought, shall we give it a go? And we went along one Sunday, and we came home. We walked home, and we said, I think that's the one.
This is the one. You both felt it.
Yeah.
Well, that's important. You both need to be united in that. Any reasons why it was the one? Any standout things you would like to share?
I can throw a few things in. Number one,
go for it.
Local.
Yes.
So one of the few churches that we were able to walk to.
Oh, dreamy.
I actually think that is an important thing. So all these other
100%.
churches that we tried, we had to get in the car and drive off.
So why is that important though?
I think there is something about the local church. So where you are situated in your town, city, whatever it might be, that church, depending on like where it is, that is your local church. And saying this is your local church that you go to and you commit to it, and they are already hopefully making a difference in the community where you are.
So good.
So you're just going to join in.
So good. I think it also allows you to be. Oh, sorry, Tim. It allows you to like be more hospitable because you're literally just around the corner, so you can invite people around for tea and like do small groups. It's all just a bit more community, I guess, if you can walk to your church.
And I would add to that, I heard Eugene Peterson on Being podcast being asked about something similar, and he said when congregants in his church would be moving on for jobs or family or whatever reason, they would ask him, what's your advice for choosing a new church? Eugene Peterson would always say to them, choose your most local church, because that's where you meet real people. Ooh. And as we all know, real people is what church is about. Isn't that right, Sam?
Of course it is. Of course it is. So we picked it in one sense because it was local, but in the other sense because, and this is something I heard from students back in the day when I would ask them, what made you choose this church?
Yeah.
And so I say it kind of with a caveat of, this is the thing they used to say. And I used to hear it and I used to think, is that the best reason to choose the church? But then I kind of did it myself, so I'm not sure anymore.
Okay.
But the standard and the quality of the Bible teaching is unbelievable.
Oh, this is important though. What did you think of students when they said this back in the day?
I think I thought something around the same thing as, people who would say, I went there because the sung worship was amazing. Oh,
you're like, and that's so not the point.
So either you're saying the sung worship was amazing or the teaching's brilliant. And both things kind of made me think, well, what you need to be doing is going there for the community. Like you need to be finding like the and it's like,
it kind of like creeps into consumer Christianity when you're there like ranking it. Was this good? Do I want to come back on that level?
I think that's a really like good way of putting it.
Yeah.
But undeniably, that has been a reason why we thought this church is a place for us to stay. And I, for the first time in a long time that I can remember, and I say this having in my previous church, I was a member of the preaching team, so I was kind of I include myself in this.
Yeah.
The preaching now at the church I'm currently at, I can still remember the preach from like 3-4 weeks ago and the application.
Oh, that's really good.
So why did you change your mind? Because you said you were sceptical about that when it came to students giving that as a reason, but it was a good enough reason for you.
Yeah, because I thought that the most important thing was to say, I'm gonna go where the community's best and I can be known and know people. And I still think that's really important. And obviously I'm not saying that that's now kind of irrelevant.
Yeah.
But whereas before I'd heard people say, I chose this church because of either the song worship or the teaching. Yeah. I think you're right to say that sounded consumer Christian to me.
Like what am I going to get from this kind of taking attitude?
Exactly. But also I think that receiving really solid and strong Bible teaching actually changes the way...
I'm actually very conflicted because I agree with you.
But but in the way that it changes how you live, that's actually really important. And you said earlier, you said your thing about where is the preaching going to most resemble a TED talk? Yeah. And it's like the opposite of that. This is like really deep, meaty, like Bible teaching. Some of the sermons go on for like 45 minutes.
Wow.
And I don't care.
You're still engaged. You're still interested.
You do care. You love it.
Well, no, that's what I mean. Yeah. But I'm like, I want more. I could like listen to more of these guys and the way they speak. So I'm saying that yes, that's been a very important thing for us as we've chosen this church.
Annette, why are you conflicted?
Because I would have been like, hands down, the reason you go to a church is to get good teaching from the Bible. So if you're there and you don't think the teaching is good, maybe, try find a different church or try find podcasts that you can listen to edify and supplement your like discipleship and faith journey. But I think I liked your challenge that actually can tend towards being a bit like consumer Christianity. If you're then going to be like, oh, I want to go there because sung worship is really important to me. That's how I connect with God. We can all kind of drum up what sound like important reasons for the thing that we want our church to give us. So now it's making me think what's actually really important about church.
But this is where I kind of push back on something else you said, though, where you used the Eugene Peterson quote.
Oh, yeah.
And forgive me, Eugene.
We love Eugene Peterson. Don't you dare slander him.
Sincerely love Eugene Peterson. But my point to his point about just go to your local church and like stay there and like, but what if they're kind of, and I think we have to be like real about this. What if they're not faithfully and honestly teaching the Bible every Sunday?
Well, okay, maybe I can answer from some of my personal experience with this as well.
Yeah.
So my wife Beth and I ended up at our local parish church because that's where they were going to read our banns of marriage. And on the first Sunday that those banns of marriage were going to be read, the vicar emailed us and said, would you like to come down? Would you like to pray for the couple after we've read their band? So we were still trying to find a home, a community to be a part of. And so we said, yeah, let's go check it out. And maybe similarly to you and Zoe, came away both thinking independently, wow, Lord, that just really felt like the place you want us to be.
Wow.
Which was an increasingly precious thing to hang on to through the next 10 years of wilderness times of wondering after many Sundays, why on earth are we here? Because the worship, I was in the worship band, was rubbish.
You were in the band and you called it was rubbish?
Yeah, I did, because I didn't know what I was doing.
Oh, okay.
I think a few Sundays in,
Love the honesty.
we got asked, are you good with kids or do you play an instrument? And we were like, well, we don't really like kids. So they said, okay, you're leading worship next week. And then I was at the deep end.
Wow.
It was that was kind of the vibe of that church. And then, and also the teaching, I was on the preaching team as well, I'd say was hit and miss. And you can tell where I'm emphasising that phrase. So both of those things became like non-reasons to go to church for us because we weren't getting like good experiences in those environments. The reason we kept going was because of the people. It was because we met real people and we met different people to the people that would have been in our Christian bubble echo chamber otherwise. And it was raw and it was messy and it was unprofessional, and I would have actually been embarrassed to invite my Christian friends to our church, let alone my non-Christian mates to my church. And yeah, it was where God wanted us to be. And I have to say, God really did some good work in us through that church by breaking down some of our preconceptions about what we needed from a church in that consumery kind of way, and actually helping us realise that we could get good music online. We could get good teaching online. We can't get real people and real relationships anywhere else than in your local church where you show up with people and do life together.
I love
that.
So
all of that to say, I think like biblically, the Great Commission is a great place to start. So Matthew 28, classic. It's just worth reading it just to get it into the conversation straight away. So, and I like this as a place to start, particularly because Dallas Willard, do we like Dallas Willard?
We do love Dallas Willard.
Yeah, St. Dallas of Willard says, it's stunning to watch churches try and come up with mission statements when the Great Commission is right there. So Great Commission is, you all know it. Jesus came to them and came to the disciples, as the risen Jesus came to the disciples and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me, therefore go and
make disciples.
Make disciples
I was like, is this a trick question? Make disciples of all nations.
Baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age.
Amen.
So that is the mission statement for the church. Make disciples. And that is fundamentally the reason to choose a church, I think.
Okay, so a church is going
will
to
it help me be a disciple? Will it help me be part of a community that makes disciples? Now, that's quite a headliney thing. And what does that actually look like? We might end up back in the place where we just were, where is it the worship? Is it the teaching? Is it the community? But I just want to put that out there as the fundamental raison d'etre for the church.
I like it.
Being disciples, making disciples.
Can I tell you my favourite ever mission statement that I saw for a church? It was a church in Reading. It wasn't the one I went to, but there was a church in Reading, and they had a banner with the name of the church on it, and then their mission statement, which said, a local church in Reading.
Great.
Fair play.
That's it. Call it what it is.
It is what it is, exactly.
Yeah.
No surprises.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to go. It went where I wasn't expecting it to.
No, I was being serious.
You were being serious. I know, but I thought you were setting it up as like a funny comment, but you were being sincere, and then I was like, no.
I saw it and I looked at it and I did think, we are a local church here in Reading, and I thought, that is very much what you are.
Yeah.
And if it is a place that, as you say, if that's creating people who walk in the way of Jesus, when we say disciple, that's what we mean. Someone who's saying that I've seen and I've read what Jesus is and what Jesus looks like, and I'm interested in being like that in the things that I do.
Yeah.
And so when sometimes here at ICC we've talked about the Sunday church service being like a halftime team talk.
Can you tell me more?
So if you imagine that, you go from what would it be? From Monday to Saturday.
Yeah.
And that's like the first half.
Okay.
And then Sunday, or the day that you gather as church family.
Yeah.
That's like the half-time team talk.
Okay.
And
get you ready for the next Monday to Saturday.
Like everybody gets back into the changing room. You talk about how things have gone.
Yeah.
What went well. What didn't go so well.
Yeah.
Somebody addresses the group and says, okay, here's what we're going to do as we go out in the second half, and then you walk out the door for the next Monday to Saturday, and then you do it all over again.
Okay.
Here's what I love about that. If we enter into that metaphor a bit, the manager is the sort of church leader or leaders in that role. The players, the ones who are out on the pitch, are the people. And one of the things I love about the Great Commission is making disciples of all nations, of all peoples, is a job that's too big for just church leaders to be able to do. You need to be releasing the people in the church to go out there to be living out the Great Commission. And that halftime team talk idea has that vision in it. Like, let's empower these people to go out and play, give a brilliant performance.
I can lean into that metaphor because I've been a football manager. I've done actual halftime.
Is there more to it?
This is it. Virtual football.
I've done actual halftime team talks for youth football teams.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter what level you're playing at, like what age they are.
Yeah.
I can watch them play in the first half.
Yeah.
And I can have in my mind, here's what I want to tell them.
Yeah.
But when I bring them in, the first thing the first question, can you guess that I'll ask them?
How are you?
How are you?
How'd you feel that way?
How's it going?
I'm checking in with their well-being.
How are you?
Are you okay? Are you having fun? Is it a good game?
Boys. How do you think that went? How did that go? What do you think? What are your thoughts?
Yeah.
And they all start piping up, and this one's going, I thought this was good, but I think we can do better if we attack them down here. I think we need to be stronger as we defend over here.
Yeah.
And my dream was that I didn't really have to say anything.
They just like pep talk each other.
The best team talks, but when they brought what I'd already seen to all of us.
I get that.
Okay, so does that mean, if we run with that imagery as a metaphor for what church should be, that if our churches aren't helping us think about the Monday to Saturday gone and the Monday to Saturday to come, we need to have some serious questions about why we're participating in that church. And then secondly, /B, whichever one I started with, the role of the leader is more a facilitator than content provider?
So I think yes, but also I think there's still an important role for that person who is the facilitator to have a strong comprehension on what's happening. So that means that for a church leader or for me as a football manager, to understand how kind of roughly like how football works, which I like to think that I did. So I'm leading them in this discussion. I'm leading them to discover, but I've got the kind of the net underneath to say I'm confident in my competence with football to be able to guide you in the right direction. I think it's exactly the same in church.
Okay.
I think it's really important that we have leaders who have received training, have received kind of instruction from other people who have led churches before, both in leadership but also in theology, to kind of make that. I'm not sure what like a backstop or some buffers or that's the safety net. That's my point.
Like correct and accurate teaching, basically.
The correct and accurate teaching from the scriptures, which is the most important thing. And so many of the letters in the New Testament that Paul writes are concerned with this. And in 1 Timothy, writing to Timothy, he says, 1 Timothy 1:3, when I left for Macedonia, I urge you to stay there in Ephesus and stop those whose teaching is contrary to the truth. Don't let them waste their time in endless discussion of myths and spiritual pedigree. These things only lead to meaningless speculations which do not help, this is the crucial bit, which do not help people live a life of faith in God. And we would then add from Monday to Saturday.
To live a life of faith in God. I love that. That's the point. I love everything you guys are saying. I can't disagree with any of it, but it's all like very ideal. I don't think this is the reality of like my Christian life when I'm choosing a church or when I have church experiences. And Tim, the first thing you said was when you and Beth finally settled in that church that read your bands, the first thing they said to you was, are you good with kids? Do you play an instrument? And immediately that's what your church experience ended up being. It wasn't necessarily, I think you had to probably, maybe I'm assuming, but did you have to work very hard to let it be an edifying time to reach out for and find community? Because actually it was a place of really intense serving and giving out and pouring out quite a lot.
Yes, I think all of that came to us bit by bit as we lived into it. And fundamentally it came down to just a question of obedience, really, and just having such a strong sense that this is where God wanted us to be.
Conviction.
That we trusted him and he would work everything else out.
Yeah, fair.
But what you raise is a good point about sort of how messy our church was, because the halftime team talk is a good image, but there are other images about what church is. So sometimes church is talked about as a hospital for like recovering sinners, or like a rehab centre, or obviously biblically there's some examples about like there's the temple metaphor and imagery, there's family metaphor and imagery. So church is meant to be all of these things at the same time, and I do like the halftime team talk imagery, but what you have to take into account in a church is that at half time, some people are coming in and they've broken their legs. Some people have come in and they've had a punch up on the pitch within their own team.
Within their own team,
someone
exactly.
scored an own goal. Like, it's not, you're not necessarily running a high performing team in a church. So I think it's a good point about the idealism.
It's very ideal. Everything you guys were sharing was so good, but I was like, it's just not the lived reality of like my experience, maybe other people's experiences, but good theology for sure.
So I think what you've said is important, and of course there are other really important things that need to happen and should be happening on a Sunday evening church service. Fundamentally for me, that comes down to relationships and learning to figure this stuff out together, because so we would all say communion, Eucharist is a really important part of church, like family meal, sometimes described as in our church. I can't do that on my own. It's not church if I'm just giving communion to myself. Like there's something, we need people to enact that. We need people with specialist and skilled training in music and in preaching and in organisational leadership and kids work and all these things, and coffee brewing is a very important role to have in the church to make this thing happen. And but you got to have people. If you take away the people, you haven't got church.
Spicy, controversial point. If you need to have people, small group, because all the things you're saying, you do that on a Thursday in your small group, connect group, focus group, insert whatever group your church calls it, but there is a gathering of smaller individuals that will meet. And I'm like, that's church.
Well,
the Sunday experience, I'm like, is that church? Is that the church that Jesus died for? I don't know.
Well, let's talk about your experience, because you live in the extremes of this. You go to basically the closest the UK has to a mega church.
It's true.
It's an absolute gig on a Sunday.
It's really fun.
It's crazy.
It's like thousands of people. It does what it does really well. That is... it's easy to be anonymous, right? It's easy to be a consumer.
100%.
You now also run a small group with your husband, James.
Yes.
So are you feeling like you're doing the church thing, the Great Commission thing, being and making disciples more in your home group than you are on a Sunday?
Ooh, no, because I think Sunday supplements the small group and the conversations that you have, and a space maybe to come together corporately and experience what it means to be the body of Christ in a really dramatic way. I think when you're there together in a small group and there's like 6 of us, that's really special. That's like family. That's like the church of God, the family of God gathered. But I would say what's really funny is that in this big church that we go to, it's not local to us. We have to drive 20 minutes to get there. That's literally such a killer, right? Massive effort. The other thing, you're like, it's all about the people, but actually it's so huge. People come and go. There is the real danger of if you don't put in work, you cannot be known, and nobody would ever know that you're not known. And I'm like, ooh, I don't know how that like feels, and how that doesn't sit that well with me. But it's the church that James was going to for like 8 years before we were together, and the church I was going to, I'd been there for 2 years, and it was 2 minutes down the road from where we live, and we both loved it, but there was that sense of, this is where God wants us to be, similar to you and Beth. And I think that's what's kept me going, this idea that if God so loved the world that he died for it, if this is the bride of Christ that he's like, this is whom I'm obsessed with, who am I to be like, God, I don't really like your girlfriend? And I'm constantly like butting up against that feeling within myself. And I remember so clearly being in a church service and thinking, I can't keep coming to this Sunday experience and thinking, oh, I'm just here, it's fine, I would wish I was at my old church, whatever. I'm here because this is where God is, this is where his people are, and I'm coming to spend time with him and to spend time with his people. And I think having that moment of awareness really like unblocked that barrier and that hard-heartedness in me when I was just like really judgy and on the fringes. But yeah, I still find myself kind of going roundabout. I'm like, maybe it's all about house groups, house churches. That's where it's at. I don't know. I could
Where
take
two
it
or
all.
three are gathered.
Where 2 or 3 are gathered.
Maybe.
That's it.
Yeah.
When we
Matthew
moved, there was kind of 2 churches that we sort of narrowed it down to.
Okay.
One being the one we're at, which is a larger church on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
There's about 250, 300 people.
Yeah.
Or a network of house churches
in
and around kind of the city and the surrounding countryside. And we had some friends who were in the house churches as well. And I remember we were talking to them one evening. We had maybe for dinner. We were sort of talking about, could we like try this out? Could we see what it's like for kind of going and doing church this way?
Yeah.
And ultimately, I actually didn't feel super comfortable with that because of the fact that people who were leading the groups, who again I've got like nothing against, like
you hate them,
actually nothing against them.
Yeah.
But I think you lose something if you don't have someone there who's got that level of theological and leadership competence to be able to kind of safeguard the group from distractions and from veering off course and all the rest of it. Because my sense is that there's lots of really talented small group leaders out there, like yourself. I was a small group leader at my last church as well.
Yeah.
And you do it, but it wasn't like I was a church leader. It wasn't like I was leading a church.
Yeah.
I think those are 2 very different things. When you're leading a small group as part of a church, and you are a church leader of a house group. And I actually think that theological study, I'm gonna nail my colours to the wall.
Oh, he's doing it.
I'm gonna say theological study in whatever medium you do it. That's not to say you have to go and like be at a seminary for kind of like 3 years residentially.
Yeah.
I think some theological study is really important for the same reasons that Paul says when he's writing to Timothy, when he's writing to the church in Corinth. All these things about, look, there are false teachers out there. There are things in the world that will try and pull you away from worshipping Christ. They will try and distract you. They will try and lead you off the path. But that's where a church leader, their expertise, their kind of experience, their learning actually is super valuable.
But Sam, do you think maybe it's a false comfort? Because we all know stories of leaders that have fallen from grace.
Absolutely.
Because people are people. Even if they've had training and they can be the most knowledgeable person, they will still be flawed. So you might as well do that like in close proximity with someone who you can encourage and challenge and call out and kind of do that friction of relationship building and conflict and outworking your faith and discipleship. But you can't really do that if they're the church leader. Like, I don't have access to my pastor. I don't know if you have access to your pastor.
I met with him last week.
Maybe it's just me then.
No, I think that's a really good point. You're right to say that, we've seen enough stories of, pastors, church leaders who haven't lived up to the standard that was expected of them.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, your learning and your experience and your actually accountability is a huge part of it. Accountability with other church leaders. And if they're doing that, then I think that's really valuable. And that is my point, which is to say, I'm not saying you'll never have any troubles if you go to a church with a church leader who studied and all the rest of it. But I'm saying that I find it of comfort to me in a really helpful way when I'm choosing a church to be a part of.
Fair. Yeah.
I like it, but it's not the most important thing.
Okay.
For me.
What's the most? Okay, this is something that's interesting. We've got, this is what's important for me. This is what's important for me. Is there anything that is important for everyone?
It's a good question. I think, all of these things that we're talking about need to be worked out on a case-by-case basis for everyone in their personal situation, which I know is a bit of a sort of like lame conclusion because it's not like these are the three things you need to do to secure church happiness forever.
Three things. Give me the same letters that these three things start with as well.
So we're all agreed, Great Commission. Like find a church where you can be a disciple, find a church where you can make disciples. But beyond that, we're saying that in our experience, different emphases have helped us do those things. So I would say that one of I draw attention to one of the recurring phrases in the New Testament, which is one another. So sometimes this is talked about the one another life in the church. And it's all of those times where Paul's writing to the churches and he says, do X to one another. So first one that comes to mind, Philippians 2, 3 and 4. In humility, value one another above yourselves. Amen. And you can think of lots of other examples like serve one another, pray for one another,
encourage one
all
another,
of these things, encourage one another, serve one another. Exactly. So we have to get up close and personal with people to do the one another stuff. And especially where that gets annoying and frustrating and messy. And I'm doing it to you, my one another, and you're not doing it back to me. Like, forgive one another. That's where it gets really difficult. But the church is the place we have to work this stuff out. It's like the training arena for going out into the real world. Because if we can't forgive one another and serve one another, pray for one another within the church, we haven't got a hope of doing it for people that we don't know outside of the church. And I want to be in a community that helps me do that and calls me to that standard more than I want to hear Bible exposition on a Sunday morning. Now, I don't have to choose between them, I know.
My point would be both and, but also I do hear your point, and I hear the point as well of my own friends who are part of that house church network, that actually, for them, some of them have had like significant challenges with church leaders and churches that they've been a part of.
I'm really sorry.
And this kind of like realization of we are the church has been so beneficial and so helpful to them, to help them, and I'll read the line from Timothy again, to help them live a life of faith in God. So if that's being realised and that's being worked out in the community where they are, I'm fine.
Can I borrow your Bible one sec?
You can borrow my Bible.
I've been trying to find something that I want to read just as a proof text verse to take slightly out of context and then make the point that I want to make.
Please
Whilst you're searching for your verse, I'm going to ask... Oh, you've already found it.
Acts 4. So, let me get the context for this.
Dun, dun, dun.
This is just to push back on your, they need to be, or they need to have 3 years of education in the church, in the ordinance school, vicar factory or whatever. So, it's a classic line.
That's not what you said.
Not what I said.
It's not what you said. It's not what you said.
When the Sanhedrin are getting wound up by Peter and John. So this is Acts 4, so the church is kicking off. The church is being birthed. Who's it being birthed by? The Sanhedrin. When they saw the courage of Peter and John, they realised that they were unschooled, ordinary men, and they were astonished and took note because these men had been with Jesus.
Ooh,
so the distinguishing factor for Paul and John is that they were with Jesus, not that they'd had schooling or training.
I love that.
Now, do you want to deconstruct that?
I want to say that if
but
today...
it's a point worth making.
I agree with you. But my point would be today that I think an effective church leader has both. They've been apprenticed to Jesus in the same way that Peter and John were, but also I think they've also got training in the scriptures. I think both and are important.
Yes, I just don't think a theology degree is the safeguard that you wish it was.
And that's not what
false comfort. That's what I said.
But that's also not what I've said. Because I went to great lengths to be like, you don't have to go to seminary and lock yourself away for 3 years. My point being
just
that
some kind of teaching of some kind.
I meet people on Sunday, older people in the congregation of the church that I go to, who've never done any formal theological training in their lives, but they've read the Bible every day for 50 years. And they have the distinct glow and mark of someone who has been apprenticed to Jesus in the same way that Peter and John were. So I'm saying you're absolutely right. A theological degree is not an immediate safeguard against all the kind of ills of leadership that may realise themselves, but also then being apprenticed to Jesus and being around him and wanting to be like him kind of is. If you're, I don't know, we're not perfect, and we're never gonna reach that.
So true.
But I'd say that's a much more effective safeguard than the theological degree.
Yeah.
To give you your due, Tim.
Yeah.
To give you your credit. I see what you mean.
Hi there. Sorry to interrupt this most interesting episode that you're watching. Please like, subscribe, comment. All these 3 things really, really help us to keep the podcast going, to get it in front of more people. And it would just mean the world to me because I care so much about this project and having honest conversations about culture, faith, and everything else in between. But back to the episode. Soz. Okay, so what would you say to someone who agrees with all of these things theoretically, but is actually just extremely burnt out by their church experience, and they feel like all they've done is pour out and it's just been a very draining thing for them, or they've been incredibly hurt by something that happened within their church community? Whatever the story may be, everyone has a story. And so all of this theology sounds nice to hear and watch us talk about, but how would you connect it to a real experience of being like sad?
I'd just say I'm so sorry.
Oh, sad.
Because that's not what the church
It's
has ever been supposed to be like.
That's true.
And what you've experienced, and I'm not familiar with kind of your situation or what might have happened to you, but it's entirely possible that it wasn't right, and it wasn't right in the eyes of God.
It's true.
And so if you're in that place where you're feeling burnt out and hurt and kind of whatever else, or bruised from the kind of general church experience, I would say sorry, and also encourage you to say that, being a part of this family is going to be hard at times. Dysfunctional. And my sincere prayer for you is that you'll find a church.
Amen.
Because I don't think it works for you to say I'm going to be a follower of Jesus but not do the church. I think I've heard that a few times.
Me too. I have a lot of friends that I like Jesus, but I'm not into the whole church thing. So.
I don't think that serves you well. If you're serious about saying I like Jesus, I think you need to have church.
That's true.
And again, I say that in full knowledge and kind of acceptance that some people will have had bruising experiences, but saying that I just pray that there is some community out there that you can find where you feel safe and able to kind of express yourself and worship God there.
Amen. Because even Jesus, he gathered 12 people around him. He started the first church, and that's what he did.
But also, how did it go?
It was probably very awkward. They all came from different backgrounds.
One of them betrayed him and then he got killed. So.
Oh gosh, so Jesus can be betrayed. We are no exception.
What about you?
Yeah, what you said is good. I think I've seen people, for completely understandable reasons, withdraw from church and withdraw from their Christian friends beyond gathered Sunday morning stuff because of hurt and frustration with the church, and that really pains me, and I feel sad about that. I feel angry about that, both for the reasons why they've done that weren't their fault, but also angry that that they've not chosen to kind of work through that stuff, because I think in any conflict, when we withdraw from each other, there isn't a chance to do the work and heal. And I'm not saying that means that you have to end up going back to that same church community, but I would encourage people to keep leaning into the messiness and while acknowledging it's hard. As per what I said, if we can't work this stuff out in the church, what hope do we have to work it out and live it out in the rest of life? Back to the halftime team talk thing. Sometimes that does happen. Footballers do fall out with each other on the same team, and you've got to work that stuff through. So I would just encourage people to work that stuff through as much as possible, even though I acknowledge how hard it is. One another life. Be disciples, make disciples.
It's good.
It's really good. I'm going to end it with a banger quote, because it's something that my husband says to me often, because I'm the one that will be griping about church, and I have to remember that I love God, therefore I love his church, and I'm a part of the church. And it's by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and it says, those who love their dream of a Christian community more than they love the Christian community itself become destroyers of that Christian community, even though their personal intentions would have been good. So every time I hear that, I'm like, oh gosh, I can't love the dream more than the reality of what is actually in front of me, and loving the reality is what Jesus calls us to do. So one another life.
It's a good quote.
It's a great quote.
Well done, James.
Yeah, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I think it's from Life Together, which is an absolute belter of a read and extremely convicting.
We love
Dietrich.
We love him.
Dietrich, Eugene,
Dallas, Eugene.
We love them all.
These are our heroes.
They are actually my three.
Really?
They are my, honestly.
And they all come up tonight.
I said I met with my pastor last week.
Yeah.
He asked me, who do I read? And I named those three.
By their first names. Did he know them?
Sam, you're the most wholesome Christian man I know, apart from my husband. Thank you guys for watching, for listening. And we would love to know your thoughts. Like, how do you pick a church? What motivates you? And does your church community help you to be a disciple and to make disciples? Please email in, write in the comments, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.